say. And when you're in your authentic self, you won't act with those triggered emotions. You will just hear them and be able to say, I understand. And sometimes it's as simple as that. I understand why you're concerned, and you can stop.
So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? Well, listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. What to do when you are feeling overwhelmed, perhaps unsupported by your spouse, and you're looking for a little help to get you through that hump of that stress of what to do with moving forward and how you can manage that yourself. Well, today we have an expert to help us walk through that process. Her name is Beth Miller. She is a teacher of psychology and sociology and has been for 12 years. She is also a wife and mother to 3 amazing, energetic little men, and she is a consulting hypnotist and Reiki energy practitioner. Now, Beth has been coaching many women on how to transform their lives through unblocking ingrained beliefs and releasing unwanted emotions so that they can unleash their best self into motherhood, their relationships, career, well-being, and their dreams. Her method is deeply rooted in psychology and neuroscience, and she was able to really come into this experience through going through a stroke and having really crippling anxiety and depression, and knowing that she wanted to get back into the game, but was going through fighting in her own home and with her family, and was really searching for that balance and that deep-rooted belief that she needed, that she could move forward and create something that helped her to feel more alive. And that's where she developed a program that helps women come to a place where they feel comfortable in their beliefs, that they overcome limiting beliefs, and that they are no longer feeling stuck or frustrated with day-to-day life. We are going to dive in today with tactics and tools, not only for how to speak to yourself and how to feel better compassion for yourself and your journey, but also how to speak to your spouse and your children in a loving way that will create space for growth and ultimately growing a business and a life that you love. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Call Me CEO. And today it is all about putting tools in your belt. And we have the best technician for what to do if you are feeling unsupported or perhaps overwhelmed with the task of convincing your partner or your spouse that what you're doing is worth it and that you can still create a healthy balance in your family and create a space where you can have balance and support and reach for those dreams. It's a big one. This is a big one. And Beth Miller is here from Soulify Wellness, and this is her expertise. She is a mother of 3 boys and has spent 12 plus years working on psychology and sociology, teaching others how to create a healthy balance and space, but truly how to transform relationships by transforming yourself. So Beth, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to dive into this topic today.
Thank you for having me.
As we dive into this, I want to hear about you, and you have a really unique experience of how your life really got turned upside down and you found your way into creating this space and helping so many others. Can you tell us about how you got started and how you developed your business?
Absolutely. So it really kind of started out of nowhere. I had no idea this is how my life was going to change. But a while ago, what happened was I started to lose my ability to walk. It was right after New Year's. So I was on the elliptical doing my thing, trying to get my New Year's body resolution happening. And I just had some weakness on my right side. And I thought, I just need to go to physio. And it just slowly got worse and worse. So over a course of about 5 days, I should have been listening to my inner gut saying, you should probably go get this checked out. But what happened was I ended up going to the ER and they did a CAT scan and I had a brain bleed. It was completely out of nowhere. I'm a healthy mom, active. I run marathons, and out of nowhere, all of a sudden I found out my brain was bleeding. It was very much an ER, like Grey's Anatomy kind of moment.
Yeah. What was your first reaction to that when you were going through this experience? I mean, what a shock, really. I think, especially at your age, I don't know what year that happened, but you look very young to me and very healthy, obviously half marathons, my goodness. Like, at what point did it get to where you're like, okay, this is serious stuff? Like, what was that moment like?
Yeah, it was very much, I was in disbelief. I actually had to ask the ER doctor, can you say that again? I don't understand. I think I actually said, I don't understand. And then the next words were, am I going to live? Then the next one was, should I call my family? And after that, it was just a bit of a whirlwind. I was in the hospital for about a month. So I had, anytime there's blood in the brain, it's called a stroke. So I ended up losing my ability to walk and write on my right side. So I spent a month in hospital learning how to rehab. But within all that physical rehab, I was experiencing a lot mentally and emotionally. My world had been turned upside down. I didn't know what my life was going to be like. I was a mom of 3 boys. I had a full-time job, and here I am not knowing what life will look like for me. So I was battling a lot of really scary thoughts. And even after I got out of the hospital, I was still battling them. And I ended up getting diagnosed with anxiety and depression because of it. And it was tormenting me day in, day out. I just had to constantly talk back to my thoughts, being like, you're safe, you're okay. And I thought at one point I was having a meeting with my psychologist, who was amazing, but she's like, you just got to keep talking back to the thoughts. And I said to her, there's got to be more. There's got to be a way to get rid of these. And so I kind of went on a journey to try and figure this out. How can I get rid of the fear that's in my mind? And I stumbled across a few different modalities, and I've combined them together to create what Soulify Wellness offers. And the secret sauce is hypnojourneying. So it's a way to kind of access those subconscious thoughts and get to the roots of all these emotions, those patterns of thoughts that we can't seem to escape. And that's how this journey all started.
That's so powerful. And what a year. I feel like more than ever, many of us are experiencing anxiety and depression in a way we never had before. I know I did. It was recently, a couple of years ago, actually during the pandemic, that my son had a really extreme accident with involving his face and almost breaking his nose, and his whole face swelled up. And the pressure on my chest, and that like you can't get a deep enough breath. I had never in my life experienced such strong anxiety. And ever since then, I feel like it's easier to recognize that once you've experienced it, it's like, oh yeah, I'm your friend. Like, I'm not going anywhere. However, I do believe in hypnotherapy because that's how I prepared for going natural without using medication for my delivery. So I have a huge belief in the power of the mind. And I also know that it takes dedicated effort. And so when you created this program, with going through something like this yourself and having been through such an extreme scenario of, thinking you might be dying, when it happened to you yourself, because you've studied psychology, were you like, okay, Beth, like, pull it together. Why can't I figure this out? We're okay. I'm safe. Or was it more like, oh, now I'm experiencing this and I have to treat myself, but I need more tools? Like, where was your brain space in that? I'm sure you went through different emotions, but tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have 2 types of minds. So they actually work as one, but we have the conscious mind. So that's the mind we work from most of the time. Like, that's our thinking, planning, organizing brain is the conscious mind. And so we spend most of our day in that brain. But when we're sleeping, we're in our subconscious. So subconscious is where we store all our emotions, our thoughts, our beliefs, our memories from the past. But we often forget about that subconscious. And that's where we store, when we don't feel like we want to like deal with something, we kind of shove it down. It's still there. It doesn't go away. It's in our subconscious. So for the longest time during those acute phases, as I was rehabbing, I was very much in the conscious mind, talking back to my anxiety, talking back to those fears, trying to rationalize it, just be like, you can go away now, I don't need you, and trying mantras, very much like in the moment, trying to just talk. But at one point, I finally got to a point where I'm like, there's got to be more. And that's when I was with the psychologist. I'm like, there's got to be a route to this. There's got to be a way. I just imagined there's got to be a way to dig it out. So yeah, then that's when I started to explore more of the subconscious option and stumbled across Reiki therapy and hypnosis. So I'm trained as a consulting hypnotist and a Reiki energy practitioner. And those 2 have really helped me dig into my mind and just really feel what I'm feeling.
Okay, this is powerful stuff. And for those who are listening and have had interest in that field, which I have, what is involved in that training? Like, how many hours of practice do you have to put in to be certified? What does that training look like?
Yeah, what happens is there's different programs to it, but it's approximately like 50 hours of training. And then you do some practice practical as well, like working with people and getting tested on that. So that would be the hypnotist training. And then Reiki practitioner, there's multiple levels. So you can become like a level 1, 2, 3, or a master Reiki practitioner. And then you'll do that over years. But it's great to even, like, if you're interested in like the energy piece, you can just get a Reiki part 1, and it's fantastic just to use on yourself or use on your kids at home. It doesn't mean you actually have to go out and practice it, but it's a great tool for your tool belt.
Why not? Yeah, I think that is something. I love that this is becoming more mainstream and more conversations are happening around this area, because as a mom, if you can tuck those in your tool belt of, okay, we're feeling overwhelmed, let's focus on being present and learning how to breathe and talking about identifying emotions and being able to express those emotions. Those are tactical tools that are transformative for kids. And I've seen that and had to learn that a lot in the past couple of years. So that is really helpful. And I hope for those who are listening, we will talk after this and I will provide some links so that if you are interested in creating, just those first stepping blocks of how to step into this, you can look into that. And we'll talk more about resources available as we go on. So diving now to section of having a spouse or a partner who isn't supportive of starting your new business. This is something that I think ebbs and flows for all of us, as whether it's having started a career and pausing for your kids, or taking a different beat, or taking a new direction and starting a new business. I feel like as women and as mothers, that can get a lot of pushback, more than it can for our male counterparts. And so, yes, I want to talk about this. Let's start from the basics. What would you say with someone who says, I have a partner who's not supporting me. I don't know if I can keep doing this? Because if you don't have the support of a partner, it can be really hard. It can be really hard to want to keep going. It can be really hard to want to keep building. And I think at different phases in your life, that partner can be supportive and then not, it just ebbs and flows. So what is square one? What would you say?
So square one is to go to that conflict, that tension. So go right to that conversation that you're having. So that conversation could be, you're always on your phone, or why would you leave your corporate job? You make great money. It's stable. You have your pension. We have our healthcare benefits. It could be like you have another meeting. How many clients did you book this week? Or how many did you sign on? Like little conversations like that can create tension and conflict within your relationship. So we need to go to that actual conversation. And then the first step with that conversation is to figure out what emotion is coming out of it. And what emotion are you feeling? Not necessarily them, because we can only change ourselves. We can't change them. And so when you feel that emotion, figure out what it is. Like if it's like you're always on your phone, and that's such a hard piece, because as you move as a female moving into an online kind of coaching business or an online business, you're on your phone, you're on your computer, you're working hours that aren't necessarily 9 to 5. So you may feel some guilt around that. That might be the emotion that comes up. And then you may get defensive. Of course, I'm on my phone. I need to be on my phone because that's how I contact my clients. And maybe I'm also doing my online grocery order and paying bills. So it looks like I'm on my phone all the time. I'm doing so much on my phone. And if you're coming from a place like that, then that's a defensive piece. We'll dig into that. Versus if you were to say this to your partner, you're right, I am on my phone a lot. I wish I wasn't on it so much. Calm voice, that's just like almost understanding their concern. So that one's okay. But if we get into the other one where you get defensive, that's the emotion. We need to dig into it because it's a trigger. You're being triggered. You have an unwanted emotion coming up. And anytime there's a trigger, we need to see it as a gift. Instead of being like, I'm triggered, I'm mad, I'm angry, and shoving it down, we actually need to be like, yes, and celebrate. I'm triggered, because that is a massive clue into the foundation of why you're having that conflict, that tension within your relationship.
Okay, so we're feeling that tension, and my goodness, what don't we do on our phones? So if you're doing anything in addition to building a business, which I don't know if there's a business you can build right now without a lot of that time being on the phone, especially as an entrepreneur, unfortunately, that's part of the gig. So we've identified that we're upset, and now what? What do we do next with that if we recognize that that's happening?
Yeah, so we celebrate. Yes, I'm mad, I'm angry. Feel the emotion. You recognize that you're triggered. You understand this is a gift, and you get excited because you know what? I don't want to feel this anymore. So you're going to start to dig into it. So when we want to dig into it, we want to get to the root of it. So to get to the root of it, there's a couple options. And one of them is to kind of look at your inner child. So inner child, this is a great strategy for figuring out how to release it. Inner child is that part of you from childhood that was like playful, excited, happy, carefree, like anything can happen, anything is possible for me. Or it could be the parts of you that were almost like a wounded, sad, or parts of you that weren't seen, weren't heard. And those can come from like little traumas in our life. Like it could just be bullying or seeing someone be bullied, could be from not getting the love that you needed from your parents. Maybe your parents didn't say I love you. So there's little things in your life that can happen. Like if you're a middle child and you just felt like you weren't getting the attention you needed, there's all these little things that some people may not be a big deal, but others, they really internalize that because they weren't having their needs met. So when we look at the guilt, let's go back to that phone example. We've been using that. So you feel that guilt. We need to figure out where that came from. And so, yeah, we can just kind of consciously think about it. But what helps is if you can get quiet in like a meditative state, or you can do some deep journaling in a very calm state, or I have the hypno journeys where you kind of listen to a recorded prompts that I give you to kind of dig out why you feel that way. And it could come from feeling guilt, like maybe you were a people pleaser as a child. You got attention, positive attention, because you did what others wanted you to do. And so now that you're not kind of following the norm by working 9 to 5, and now you're on your phone and you feel like you should be with your kids, you feel like you're not that people pleaser anymore. And so you might have a bit of a conflict internally, which is causing that feeling to come up. So we need to go in and figure out what the root cause of it is. And that's the next step.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's say, and I think this is so relatable. I imagine a lot of us are listening right now, nodding our heads like, I have been there. I get that. I feel that. Let's say that also something that's very relatable, that is, as women and as caretakers and as someone who is identified most often as taking care of everyone's needs, people pleasing is a very common thing as a mom, that you're like trying to keep everyone happy, right? Or say you are the people pleaser. Let's say that you want to keep the equilibrium happy and giving the best pieces of you. What then? Let's say that that is what that is. Then what?
Then what you do is we have to go inward. So we need to actually go back to that time, or you can do this journaling, or you can do this in meditative state. But what you need to do is kind of go back to that younger self. Here's an example. So just say you have a sister, you two are sitting on the couch, and you remember back, like this happened multiple times, that your parents would not want you guys to fight on the couch. You're picking your TV show. Back then we didn't have cable. You just kind of had to watch one or another show, and you had to fight about it. And so then what you're doing is you're just people pleasing. You're like, okay, my younger sister can watch whatever show she wants, so we don't fight, my parents don't get mad. So that's a people pleasing behavior. So you can go back to that. And what you can do is you talk to your child self. Like, it sounds kind of silly, but what you have to do is it's called reparenting. You almost look at that situation from an adult perspective, and you can talk to yourself being like, Camille, it's okay. You know what? Your parents just don't like when there's arguing or yelling. Doesn't mean that people don't like you. You have a right to express your opinion regardless of what their expectations are. You don't have to just give in to your sister. And you almost like talk to yourself so that you kind of believe that, you know what, I do have a voice, I can be heard. And it helps kind of build your confidence in that moment. And by doing that, you can kind of release, and you feel this like lightness to yourself, being like, you know what, that's right. What happens is a lot of times those inner child, like kind of mini traumas, they resurface, they come back up in our relationships most often in a magnified way, but we don't always recognize them as something that we didn't actually own about ourselves, or a piece that wasn't heard or seen, or we weren't loved for that as a child.
That's really interesting. Now, one thing that comes up as a question for me hearing that is, what if you have a horrible memory and you maybe don't know how to identify those moments? I've heard that when people are in a hypnotic state, or if they're going through this type of therapy, inner child work, that your therapist will help you to uncover them, because sometimes it's just tucked so far back. What would you suggest for someone that's listening to this who's thinking, I have an awful memory? Like, how do I identify those moments that meant something to me?
That's a fantastic question. So I have two answers to that. The first one is, you never relive your past. You often get to look at it from like the most empowered state. You're almost like, you can kind of look down at yourself and give yourself what you need. So that's kind of like reassuring, like, because people are scared to do this work, and they're scared just because they don't want to relive that emotion. It's just easier to stick it down. And back to that conscious mind, subconscious mind, the conscious mind is there to protect us, there to make sure we don't feel pain, that we feel pleasure, there to tell us just get rid of that feeling. It's kind of like, this is kind of silly, but you know, some people are like, oh, I could so use a drink, like wine o'clock. As a mom, we're like, let's have a glass of wine to deal with the stress of being with the kids all day. That's our conscious mind being like, I don't want to feel this stress anymore. I think I'll just have a drink to kind of numb that or push that feeling down. So back to this, what you can do is you can also do this work along with, like, if it's a really deep trauma like abuse, I would also do this work along with a licensed therapist, like a psychologist, that can help you dig further into those and process some of those traumas from childhood. So together, this work, it works really well to do a bit of talk therapy with a psychologist, but then to also do the inner child kind of hypnotic work.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you're suggesting if someone's listening and they're feeling that there's something they need to identify, but they're not quite getting there, and you are telling me that there is work that can be done, but if they are struggling with that process, it's best to get a professional involved. And what could you tell me about creating space to reduce the fights right now? Let's say that someone's like, but I need help. Yes, okay, I could get a professional, but how do I get my spouse's support or create space for understanding right now? Are there tools that you could give us today for that?
Absolutely. So what you need to do is kind of go back to that, whatever the conversation is. So you have the conversation happen, you realize your emotions coming up. You can control you. You can never control them. We always kind of go in with we love them to change. We want to convince them that what we're doing is right, but we need to kind of step back and we just need to hear them out. And you want to hear them out from your authentic self. So your authentic self is this like incredible piece of you. And we may not be in touch with it every day. A lot of times as moms, we are so busy that we almost lose our identity because we're so busy kind of helping others and doing things that need to be done, not necessarily doing things that feel authentically like us. So to get in touch with your authentic self, what you want to do is a couple things. You can go back to a time, and it might have just been a moment, like to say you were an athlete or a singer or dancer when you were kind of on the stage and you were like glowing, like nothing could knock you down. You're just in flow, you're in your element. You almost want to channel that. You just want to like embody that feeling, that energy that you had when you just felt on top of the world. So if you can kind of just even sit there, even right now, you can just sit there and see if you can kind of feel that energy flow through your body where you're just like at peace. And what you want to do, and over time, you can be that person more often with practice. You just have to kind of remember to do it. Because then often when we get into like disagreements, you forget and you just get into like a fight mode. But if you can just take a breath and embody that, like you just hear them, just listen to them. And you almost like lovingly see that they have their own, what we call shadows. So they have their own shadow emotions. Like us, they have their own like fear, maybe fear of like, you're not going to make enough money, fear that, you know what, it's going to take up a lot of time. What does that mean for me as a spouse? Like, it doesn't mean I'm not going to get as much time. Does it mean I have to do more work around the house with the kids? They have their own beliefs that they are scared of when it comes to this transition into you starting your own business. So we just have to lovingly respect that and meet them where they are. So when you can do that and just hear what they have to say, and when you're in your authentic self, you won't act with those triggered emotions. You will just hear them and be able to say, I understand. And sometimes it's as simple as that. I understand why you're concerned, and you can stop. That's all you have to say. And then you can hear them say their next piece. And sometimes they just need to talk, and you don't need to defend yourself. Just hear them out.
I love that. I love that you are saying a lot of times it's about being heard and simply stating, I understand, or I can see how you would feel that way, or that would be really difficult. Let's work on this together. Something like that, where you're coming with an open heart. And that can be hard, especially if you do feel, I think it's very natural to want to put up but don't you know, this is what I do. And don't you know, like I have all these things I'm getting done, or like you said, I'm grocery shopping, or I'm doing this or that. What would you suggest for a couple? Do you think it's a good idea if someone is taking on a new business or a new position or changing their lifestyle in some way? Do you think it is a good idea for couples to sit down and put together a task list, like this is mine and this is yours? Or do you think that's not a good idea? Are you looking for a way to connect with your purpose and your why? Well, I have a free 5-day challenge to help you discover your why and feel more connected to who you are as a mother, as a person, and as an entrepreneur. What is it that helps you tick? What is the way that you can prioritize your day and create a space for you to continue to grow and feel connected to yourself so that you have more of yourself to give? Go to camillewalker.co to get that today.
Oh, 100%. That's a fantastic idea. If you can get your partner on board to kind of start deviating tasks, because when we start your own business, it's like a season, right? Things are really hectic for a while and you're not making a lot of money. You're working really hard. And sometimes like we have so much self-doubt in that stage because you're like, is this ever going to happen? Is this a pipe dream? Am I crazy to think this? And why am I working so hard? The reason I'm working this hard is because I want more freedom. I want more time with my kids, but I'm not getting that. So you have all this self-doubt, and then you have your partner maybe not supporting you, and it's a lot to carry around. So if you can get your partner on board and kind of figure out, yes, they're going to take on a few more tasks right now. They're going to watch the kids, put them to bed so you can have some of those like 7-8 o'clock meetings. Then yeah, that's an awesome way to go at this together.
I love that. I know that for me personally, with my husband, there have been seasons of time where it's been really helpful for him to help me draw attention to perhaps deadlines I put on myself that don't need to exist. But in my mind, I'm like, no, but this is how long it's going to take. And I want to get it done by X. And a lot of times he'll say, but why is it that deadline? Why did you create that deadline? And I think sometimes it can be really helpful to look at that moment as they're trying to help you, and they're trying to help you take a beat or take a pause or pace yourself. And I think it's also important to let your partner know this is a season where things are getting crazy, and I recognize that. I don't want it to be at this pace forever, but I do know these next 2 months, for whatever reason, it's brand new, or even the first year, I do know that this is going to be asking a lot of you. And I'm asking you to be there and to know that it's going to be crazy. But I don't want it to be like this forever, just to kind of give them an idea of what to expect or where your mindset is, because I know that has helped us, for my husband and myself, because then it kind of gives them an idea of, okay, where do I fit in this? And is this the pace it's going to be forever? Because I think that's kind of that transition of sacrificing your capacity as a parent and as a mother and as a spouse. It can be hard, and that, I think, discussions, like you said, coming from your authentic self is the only place that can really move forward with progress, because otherwise it can feel like you're spinning your wheels.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And when you're spinning your wheels, those emotions that are coming up, you might be projecting like your own worries onto others around you too. Like, because your partner just says, did you book any clients, or did you get any clients this week? You might take that as, because you already have this worry within you. So you project that out, being like, he thinks I'm doing enough, that I'm not good enough. And you all of a sudden have these feelings because of one little comment that's not actually true. So we have to be aware of our emotions, just because we might be kind of throwing them out there, even though they're not necessarily what someone else in our relationship, like our partner, thinks. And the other piece of that too is when our husbands or our partners, maybe when we sense that they have frustration, they have worry, they have concerns, they're mirrors for us. So our partners and people in our lives are these great teachers. People come into our lives to teach us something, then often sometimes they leave. But with our partners, they are the greatest mirror we can possibly have, because these things from our childhood or past, those insecurities, that feeling of undeservingness, they come up, and our partner will show those to us with their concerns, because all of a sudden you might feel their concerns might make you feel nervous, and you have to dig into that feeling of nervousness. So they're these great teachers. So you can look at them that way. Every conversation that has some conflict or tension, that's why we celebrate these triggers, because they are showing us. If it wasn't for those conversations, you wouldn't necessarily know that you have these things within you, these beliefs, these patterns that are holding you back. And when you can unleash those and let them go, you can step into so much more. All of a sudden, more money will flow in, more clients will flow in, your relationship will be better with your partner. And that's what I found. Like when I was back after I had the brain bleed, I started this journey just to help with my anxiety and depression. But what happened was my whole life transformed. As I released that fear, I started to release other emotions. My marriage transformed, and my career, everything. It's spectacular. Like when you can release not feeling enough about your business, like being like, oh, am I good enough? Do people actually want to buy my product? You then all of a sudden show up and you're enough in your relationship. You realize that you are you have a lot to offer. You're worthy of like love, you're worthy of respect. And it's incredible how your whole life changes over one belief that you can get rid of.
I love that. Can you tell me about a time where you felt like you were at a breaking point, maybe within, your recovery or transitioning into this new place where you had an aha moment where it transitioned for you, where you went from feeling like overwhelmed and down on your luck to then feeling that hope? Can you tell me about a time in your life when that happened?
Oh geez, I don't like I remember the moment where I knew something had to change. It was that moment with the psychologist where I was crying. It's crystal clear in my mind when I said to her, there's got to be something more. So I remember that breaking point, which started me on this journey. In terms of like my whole life shifting, you know what? It's strange that you say that because I think it was about, I don't know, 4 months after that point where I realized my husband and I weren't actually arguing anymore. We weren't having the same kind of battles. So what happens was when you shift these beliefs, like when you release these feelings of not being enough, like when you can go in and kind of parent your inner child or just go back in time and kind of give yourself what you needed, it's called reprogramming. When you can go back and do that, you just feel this lightness, but you don't actually notice the effects in your life right away. It's not like, aha, that's gone. So now I'm not going to have any more arguments. It's slowly, all of a sudden, you'll just be like, oh, it's not there anymore. I don't have that dread, that fear that I'm going to fail as a business owner. Suddenly those feelings just kind of go. So that part's really neat how that happened. So I can't pinpoint an exact moment when I noticed the shift, but I remember kind of looking back being like, oh, all of a sudden things are so much better between us. Like we're connecting more, we feel more supported by him, and we're laughing again. We're just having fun. It's not the same like constantly talking about we need to pay this bill, the kids need to be here, they need to be there. So yeah, that it just kind of happened. I just noticed all of a sudden.
Any advice for perhaps you're in a space where you're doing work, you're very in tune with yourself and your needs, and you're starting to connect more with your authentic self, but you notice that your spouse is not on that same playing field and is still coming from maybe an ego state of mind? Because I have seen in my field of work many women who in many instances exceed their spouse's income or their spouse's level of success, and it becomes a threat and it really challenges the relationship. What would you say to that space where perhaps you are doing a lot of inner work, or maybe you're reaching levels of success that are big and your spouse is threatened by that? What would you suggest for someone in that scenario?
Yeah, for sure. So what you would do is really harness that authentic you and really understand we can't change them. There's nothing we can ever do. You have to come at it with being like, they're never going to change, even though they might. And often they do. As you grow, there might be some backlash at first, being like, they don't recognize this new you who's not combative and are like not fighting back, but getting defensive. They almost don't, they're ready to be defensive over something, but all of a sudden you're not. So it's weird in that first little in between when things start to shift. But eventually, a lot of times I find that the husbands kind of catch on and it just changes the whole relationship. But if you're finding that they're not changing, they're not buying in, what you need to do more than ever is just really go inward, and you need to find that self-love. You got to find the reasons why you don't feel like you're enough, or the reasons why you might still feel their doubt on you is personal, because we don't need to convince them. Like if it's your journey, if your intuition is telling you like, this is what I want to do, this is my dream, my desire to have my own business so I can create whatever your why is, whether it's more time with your family, more financial freedom, to be able to travel more, just tap into that why and you hold that why in your heart. And you can even picture your husband, your spouse in your heart with that why, and just lovingly accept that that's where he's at now. That's where she, like your partner, if it's a female, that's where they are at, and put them in your heart and with your why, and just hold on to that piece. But you can't change them. You have to accept that and just keep working on yourself so that you can get to that place. Like, I do love myself. I accept myself. I know 100% this is the path I'm on for this reason.
That's really neat. I think that that's really special because I think I know someone who was in a really hard place with a spouse. And she said, I'm giving this 1 year. And what I'm going to do is I am going to choose happiness. And no matter what happens, no matter what he says, what he does, the things he is upset about, I am going to choose happiness and treat him with love. I'm giving it 1 year. And she was shocked by how much that decision changed her life, her own happiness, and eventually her marriage, where it was almost like a shock, on his side, where he's like, why aren't you fighting back? Or what's going on? Or, and she's like, I'm just going to choose. And it wasn't something she told him. She wasn't like, okay, you're on your 6th month, it wasn't like that at all. It was more just this work that she did on her own, and just knowing I'm choosing happiness. And I think it's that authentic self and that love. And that's how I'm going to respond. And it changed everything. So I have seen that firsthand. I'm sure that if you can work on that subconscious and that inner child and that shadow work, that a lot of us, that may be new verbiage that you're hearing for the first time. I think that if you can dig deep, that really could contain so much magic for you and your potential. And there are many episodes I have done about energy and exchange of energy, and how business really is an exchange of energy. And if you're operating at a high vibration, then so many good things will come your way with yourself and your business. And it's hard to bring about that energy and that happiness and that gratitude if you're not there in your own mind. So let's talk a little bit about what you offer, because I know that you offer a service where people can go through a program and hear about how this works. So tell us kind of a little bit about your program and what people can expect with this transition, where you can help them do that.
All right. So my program, it's a 12-week program, and it's called Marriage Saver. So the Soulify Marriage Saver. And what it is, it's a series of different modules that you work through to better dig into these triggers that are coming up, to dig into that inner child, to do that shadow work. And I can talk about shadow a little bit if we want to dig into that more, exactly what it is. I look at your true you blueprint. Like, what are you authentically? What do you want? Because I find as so many moms, we lose that identity. You forget who you are. You almost like you're stuck. You're confused. Like, you feel like you have these dreams, but they're like, are they actually obtainable? As a child, everyone told me you can do what you want. But now as an adult, you're kind of molded into this box of having to do this because you have so many responsibilities. So you get in touch with your true you, so you can navigate these triggers and every emotion that comes up. You actually do a bit of a true you relationship, just to figure out what is it that you need in your relationship. And money is such a big piece of this that I actually do some relationship money manifestation as well, so that together with your partner, you can dig through some of the money blocks that you have, like have to work hard to make money, that I don't have enough money, will we ever have enough money? We dig into setting boundaries. So how do you set a boundary with your partner? So when you feel stuck in your business, so there's all these little modules that you can work through. I coach you one-on-one. You can get in touch with me every single day if you'd like, through a Voxer app. And then I do some actual hypnotic, like deep meditation, what I call the hypno journeys. And we do that together, and I'll dig into your mind, and we'll actually like one-on-one session, and I'll get in there. It's a lot of fun. I get to play around and help you release that. But one thing people do get a little nervous is, am I out of control? And never, like with hypnosis, you are always 100% in control. Your subconscious will never, ever reveal anything it's not prepared to reveal. You're fully awake and you're aware of your surroundings. So it is a very powerful tool. And often we are in that state just before you fall asleep. It's called a theta brainwave sleep. When you're kind of dreamy falling asleep, or when you wake up, you're like, I know I have to get up, but I still can sense some of my dreams. That's the exact state you're in. So completely aware, but you're just a little bit more in that subconscious brain.
Yeah. And I can confirm that, because having done my Hypno Babies training, they actually had a practice track for a spouse or a partner to do with you, where it was just that very first, like walking you through it with an audio, and having your eyes closed, and now try to open your eyes, and you shouldn't be able to open your eyes. And my husband did it, and he couldn't open his eyes. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so freaked out. Like, this really worked. And he's like, that's cool. I'm never doing that again. Cause it was just he was so skeptical that it could work, that when it did and he couldn't open his eyes, he was like, that is so freaky. But I think it's a testimony of that this actually works, and that you're very much aware, you know what's around you. You could easily stop at any time if you needed to, but it's almost like this, like you said, that dreamlike state. Or another way that I've heard it described is like where you're driving somewhere you've always been, and you kind of like don't even realize that you're driving until you get there. And then you're like, oh, I'm already here. And it's kind of like, you can kind of go into that Zen-like state of mind where you're not as actively thinking about every single thing that's happening right in front of your eyes, but you're still very much aware you're not like driving off onto a curb or something like that. So I think it's really powerful. And yeah, let's talk about shadow work just for a quick minute for people who are hearing that for the first time. They're like, what the heck is shadow work? Walk into a fantasy novel. Like, what are we talking about?
For sure. I'll talk about that in 1 second. I just wanted to address just in case any of your listeners are a little worried why your husband's eyes wouldn't open. I just thought I would address that, explain the science behind that. So what happened there was he was listening to some different journal prompts that got him into such a relaxed state. It got him out of his beta brain state. That's that thinking, planning, conscious brain state, and got him so deeply relaxed that that part was able to kind of step over to the side. And your subconscious is very subjective. Like it absorbs everything that's around you and it can hear and it follows instructions really well. With your subconscious mind, if you were to say, I hate myself, it believes that, even though your conscious mind would be like, I don't believe myself. So you can give suggestions and your subconscious believes it. So when you can quiet the conscious mind, that beta brain state, and relax it, then your subconscious, who's very likes these suggestions, will close their eyes and it'll stay closed because it's a good little thing that's listening very well. But the moment you feel like not as relaxed, you can just open your eyes again. So like you can open your eyes if you let yourself be like, okay, I'm not so relaxed anymore. So it's not like they're stuck and you need whoever the therapist is working with you to tell you can open your eyes. Like you can open them if you want. So I just wanted to let your audience know that, you know what, they're not stuck shut. You're just in such a deeply relaxed state that your subconscious is working its magic. And yeah, that's what happens. So shadow work is like a backpack. So imagine that you have this backpack and it's carrying all those beliefs, all those emotions that you have never processed. So like I said earlier, kind of like if you were bullied, feeling like no one loves you, or if someone passed away in your life as a child, but you felt sad, but the adults didn't really tell you or talk to you about it, you might have put that like sadness in your backpack. So it's this amazing backpack where we put all our embarrassing thoughts, anything times we feel jealous, anything that society tells us we're not really supposed to feel, you put those in your backpack. And that backpack is your shadows. And a lot of times our inner actions, our words all come from that backpack. So when we get triggered, that's just a little clue as to what's in our backpack. So when I mentioned earlier that your partner may be kind of projecting their own shadow emotions, their triggers onto you, that's their own beliefs. So shadows are kind of just beliefs, like limiting beliefs or ingrained beliefs that aren't in your highest good.
So when you're dealing with someone else's shadows and you can't control what that looks like or how that's dealt with, but they're kind of thrusting their shadows on you, even demanding an answer for their own issue, what would you say would be the best way to respond to that?
So I'm trying to think of an example. Let's see. So if your partner was to say, you're going to leave those dishes in the sink. Like they have this like belief that the house always has to be clean because maybe that's how they grew up. Like before the kids go to bed, the dishes are done, the counters are wiped. So they're projecting onto you, why are the dishes not done? Why are you leaving them in the sink? So that's their belief. So again, we can't change that, but we can stand in our authentic self and lovingly be like, you know what, I have a lot going on tonight. I promise I'll do them first thing in the morning. And then you're coming from your authentic self. If they still want them done right away, you just have to repeat yourself being like, because whatever's your best good, like you don't want to do something that's going to kind of lower your vibe. Like you want to stay in that high vibe, and your priority right now is, you know what, I'm done with the dishes. I'm done with the cleaning. I need to respect my own energy. I know it's time for me to go to bed. So it's just staying within your worth, your deservingness, your self-love, and kindly, lovingly projecting that onto them and showing them where you are at with that belief.
I love the words you used. I need to protect my own energy, because it's coming as an I statement, which is what we are taught we should do. Is, not saying you. It's an I, because you can only speak for yourself and be in that authentic space and present that in that way. So I really like that, where that's a really nice way of framing it, but still acknowledging that it's not happening tonight. Like you're done. Or like making dinner every night. I know sometimes that can be, not sometimes, that can be really hard when you're giving, and you have nothing left for dinner and you're just like, it's just not happening. I'm exhausted or I'm done, So I guess you could apply that same statement of, I am tapped out. My energy is out today. I know it's not ideal, but we need to pick something up, or, whatever that looks like. Would you suggest that same language could apply there as well?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. really going inward and knowing what you want. Like if your gut's saying, you know what, let's order pizza tonight, but you feel like, oh, I need to provide a healthy meal for my kids, my family. That's a belief. That's the belief being like, I should. Anytime you should, could, would yourself, it means it's not authentically yours. And same thing, if you should somebody else, it probably means you're projecting a belief onto them that isn't actually serving you. So absolutely go inward, be like, my energy says I just need to order pizza, and order pizza. And work through that belief that you always every night have to cook a homemade meal, or whatever that belief is that you have.
And so what if those expectations are coming from your spouse? Like, what if he is saying you should, could, dinner, why is dinner not done? Or why, and then what? Just come back with the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And then maybe that's something that you need to, like, in that night, for sure, just you gotta stand your ground in that one, or maybe you will compromise that night. But then going forward, having a conversation, being like, based on what I'm experiencing with my new job or with the business I'm creating, I find that instead of cooking homemade meals 5 times a week, that maybe we should do batch cooking on Sunday, where we make a whole bunch of like certain meals, and then we can eat them as leftovers, or start to problem solve. So yeah, maybe that one night you compromise, just to, right, you don't have to completely stand in your authenticness, which is saying, I don't want to cook, but maybe together you can do it. And then going forward, have that conversation, that planning, but knowing that your energy going forward, you don't want to deplete it all on making meals. You need to come up with a new plan.
Yeah, I love it. Beth, this has been so great. I love that it's about love. It's coming forth with really tapping into your own emotions and coming to your relationship with acceptance and really listening and problem solving together. Those are all things that we talked about today. And I'm so grateful for this conversation. I feel like it's going to help a lot of people. Please let our audience know where they can find you and look into the offerings that you have.
You can find me on Instagram, Facebook at Soulify Wellness. And I have some more tips and tricks. If you want to download a free guide, it's called How to Save Your Marriage. So it's this guide that has some extra little tips in it. And you can get that at freemarriageguide.com.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
If you loved today's episode, which I really hope you did, please join in on the conversation on Instagram with me at Call Me CEO Podcast, or DM me personally at camillewalker.co on Instagram. I love getting messages from you. I love my audience to connect with me. And if you have an idea or a business you want to share, I am all ears. I think that this group of women that we've established here is incredible, and I am inspired by you every single day. So thank you for being here. I really mean it. Talk to you soon.